So this week we're doing something a little differently. Life has gotten so hectic for us. Um, my youngest has gone back to school, so which we've always homeschooled, and she decided she wanted to go to school, so we had to get all kinds of things done with that. We're taking care of my father-in-law at a facility that's now close by, thank God, where we're having to do a lot of stuff in his memory care unit with different falls and things that's been going on for him. And like, with the things that we do, that my wife's an occupational therapist, and meaning that um, it's a busy life for us right now. And that's why I want to get this podcast out. So I'm having to do the intro. And what I'm doing this week is we just did an Ask the OT, and it was a really good ask. We answered some questions that I think are uh, pertinent to what people are going through in their struggles in working or dealing with somebody, an aging loved one of some sort that they're having struggles with in their caregiving. So um, where I'm going to do the opening here, and one of the things we talk about in this is taking care of my father-in-law. But I wanted to just bring up the memory of what my mom went through. Uh, we didn't know that there was a problem. This was back in around 2004, I believe, somewhere around there. Um, what triggered out what was going on for us? Um, One of the things was a phone call that I got from my mom. My mom and I, we got along, but we didn't get along on certain issues. Religion was one of them that we didn't get along with. She was very overbearing in her push for certain things in religion that I didn't quite agree with. So we had always agreed, we'd gotten to a point where we agreed to that would be a subject we really wouldn't discuss. And and my mom and I would usually talk maybe about once a week or once every 2 weeks, usually on a Sunday afternoon. Uh, of course, having the fact that religious is a conflict with us, maybe that Sundays wasn't the best day to have conversation with her, but that's just something that was kind of set up for us. We talk during other times of the week sometimes too, but usually you'd have a conversation on a Sunday afternoon. And again, we had come to agreement over time that we wouldn't we just wouldn't brush on that my beliefs versus her beliefs and when it came to religion. I think politics might have been the other one too, but religion was one of them. And this particular Sunday, I remember it well. We were having a conversation, and um, I didn't go, did wasn't regularly going to a church at the time. I had kind of fallen away from the Catholic Church, which is what I was raised in. Just having different beliefs, we started going to a non-denominational place. And that particular Sunday, I don't think we made it to church that Sunday for whatever reason. And we were talking to I was talking to my mom, and she said, you didn't go to church today? She got kind of upset by it. And I said, well, Mom, we've already talked about not that we weren't discussing that point, religion anymore because it just was a place we disagreed about. What are you talking about? Uh, You, oh, and she would just give me, you know, oh, Don, that's terrible that you're not doing that. And something inside of me kind of I didn't argue with her much. I said, "Oh, well, I'll try to." I kind of just brushed it up and said, "I'll try to do better." And I let it go. But when I hung up the phone, I called my sister and I said, something's not right here. I said, Mom, brought up a subject that we talked about not discussing, and she brought it up and just acted like we had never talked about that before." And I found that really weird because it had gotten to a point where when we came to that decision, we would just have fights over it. And so I knew that this was not right. At the same time, my sister said, that's really interesting because um, I had a call from mom's neighbor, the lady who lived next door, who had always who was always there watching out for mom when things were not going, something was happening. She was a really neat neighbor, um, which goes into another whole story because the same house that that person lived in, the person before that was not a good neighbor for us. We always had trouble as kids with the lady that lived there. Um, she was just really angry person, and anything we did, which she would always get in trouble with. So it was nice having a neighbor next to my mom. This was that she moved in there after I was already out of the house, but so this neighbor was very good to her, watched out for her, helped her out. She had a son, I don't know how old, I think he was a teenager, that would cut the grass for mom. And um, when I was calling my sister about this event, this thing that happened that Sunday night with my mom, she said, "Well, it's interesting," and I can't remember the lady's name at the time that was there, but she had called my sister and said that my mom had come over two or three times to pay her for my son's cutting the grass, to pay my son for cutting the grass, and she had already paid her when when her son had cut the grass. But now she's coming over. She kept coming over two and three times, um, wanting to pay again. And she found that very odd. So my sister decided to do a little kind of investigating. The next time she was over at my mom's, she happened to go, I think, go into her bedroom, and there she noticed sticky notes all over the place with notes of reminders to do this and do that. And um, it really then triggered at the beginning of getting some checkups done and finding out that my mom was dealing with some dementia, and also that she had had some we believe she had some TIAs at one point that might have helped to um, exacerbate the cognitive issues going on. And so it started a whole process for us, which led to having mom put into assisted living, and she was there for about 6 months. They had a heart attack and ended up in a nursing facility where she ended up passing away after I think this all of this came was about a 2 year period of it went kind of quickly once we found out. It was an awakening for us and to see all of these, see the notes, see how much she had declined but hadn't been telling us, and who knows, you know, whether she could have been um, over drugging herself, taking taking her pills too much or too little. We don't know. Any of that could have played into it, and it was then beginning of a decline for her. So anyway, that's that's what happened for me. And welcome. This is Focused Healthy Family, and I'm Don, and my wife Gina usually joins us in this intro. But like I say, the way our life's going right now, and in order to get this podcast out, I'm doing this alone, and this is podcast number 129, and it's going to be going to share with you the Ask the OT we did today, in which we answered some questions that we had gotten. One of them is about somebody that was really having a hard time seeing her parent go through what they were going through, and kind of wanted to avoid going back to visit them because of that. So Gina talked about that and how to answer that. And then also um, talked about how one question was about how to deal with the triggers that the parent was actually bringing up old stuff over and over and over. And it was triggering some anxiety from the past and asking how to deal with that. And again, Gina and I talked about how to handle that kind of those triggers. So I wanted to share it because I thought it was a pretty powerful ask, and I wanted to share it today in this podcast. So that's what our podcast is this week. And so now I will turn you over to the video of the Ask the OT that was done today, Wednesday, and it'll be broadcast tomorrow. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoy this podcast. Welcome to another Ask the OT, and I am presently waiting for Gina. We're about ready to get her on here to talk, but welcome to another Ask the OT. Oh, and I have to silence my. Gina has 30 plus years as an OT and has brought her to this place of consulting with people who are caring for an aging parent or a loved one. In this series, Ask the OT, Gina gives a sampling of the consulting work by answering questions live. So let's get to the session. And let me let Gina in here, and we will have her join in with us. Again, Gina's an occupational therapist, presently working in some facilities here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and her activities daily are working with patients in helping them get back into activities of daily living. She also, on a personal side, is working with her own uh, father to help him through his issues with Parkinson's and dementia. And so going through quite a bit in in both a personal sense and a business sense. And then, of course, having to come home and have a family that deal with family things that go on a regular basis. So it's a lot, and we understand the struggles. That's why we we do this to help others that are going through what we go through. And we have the advantage of Gina being an occupational therapist in understanding um, what to do, what to ask. She's dealing with situations every day with her dad and knowing and learning a lot, even though she knows a lot about being in that industry, working with senior population for a long time. She understands and knows what to ask, what to do, what places to go. But even in the situation she's dealing with in um, this place with her father, and uh, she's learning a lot too, even more about this. And that's why we want to come to this place of helping others because we've gained so many resources, so many answers ourselves, and plus having our skills and background, um, we are able to help others. And so I now join in with Gina here. She is live, actually coming from remotely from her place of work, taking her time through lunch to be able to come on and answer questions for people that are out there that may be struggling going with dealing with an aging parent that's maybe in a facility or maybe at home that they have to be able to know what to do for them in situations. So anyway, hello Gina, welcome back here.
I'm trying to connect to my earbuds, but it wasn't working. And hopefully my connection will hold up because I'm using my hotspot on my phone to connect to my iPad.
So far, so
Um,
good. You sound fine here. So, um,
so I'm from work today, working as an occupational therapist in a skilled nursing facility, which has both short-term rehab and long-term care. So when your loved one leaves the hospital and they say they need rehab, and they're not going to a hospital acute rehab, they're going to a skilled nursing facility rehab, what used to be called subacute rehab. They're going short time to a facility, and that's the goal: is rehab 5 days a week minimum, hopefully more, um, to be able to build their strength back. So I'm working a couple hours today and coming onto this call and juggling a phone call from where my dad's at. So before we do anything, we have to remember to take care of ourselves. And so if you are eating your lunch, it's important to remember to keep eating with water. I
Maybe we
came
could.
outside, taking a big breath in and out, taking a deep breath in and blowing out. Breathing in calm, blowing out all the stress and frustration. One more time, breathing in the calm and peace and centering. And breathing out the angst and the stress and centering myself. What's happening? So literally juggling all these responsibilities right now as we talk about. Um, got a couple hours of work. Had to deal with a phone call about my dad. Got to be done at work to pick up my daughter at school at 3:30.
Yeah. Well, I kind of talked about that. I started this before you got on and was talking about the fact of, we understand the struggles they go through because we're going through them. You you yourself, especially having to balance, you're working in this population not every day, but you know, 3 and 4, 5 times a week, and then dealing with your dad and what he's going through, and then coming home and having to do the family stuff, the everyday family stuff that goes on. So
And
yeah.
care for my dad. So I was at work and I got the phone call, and it was from the nurse practitioner. And I grabbed sticky notes and I had to be like, okay, I got to clock out from work to handle this, and writing down so that I can share with my mom the concerns I voiced about caring for my dad. Do you have any specific questions right now, Don? Because if not, I will.
I do actually have I gotten a couple of them that I think they they kind of go along with what even the what we did in the grounding and breathing and the preparation. The first one, I've got two of them. It says, "It is so hard to watch my dad go through his dementia. He sometimes doesn't even usually recognize me as his daughter. He thinks I'm his granddaughter. I don't really want to see him this way or remember him this way. Is it okay if I just let the rest of the family visit and I stay away?"
Mm. It's a difficult thing watching your parent go through dementia and when they don't recognize you. Um, that must be a really difficult thing. I, my dad does not have the type of dementia where he doesn't recognize who we are, but I know that's very common with other dementia, especially Alzheimer's. And I can only imagine how painful that is. And yet, the fact that he thinks, you're his granddaughter, um, he thinks you're family. And I just to point out to anybody who's in that situation, don't correct them, especially if we're dealing with Alzheimer's here, and just rolling with it. Or sometimes it's word finding. They saying granddaughter, but they kind of know who you are, but they can't vocalize it. Um, um, I don't like when people go and say, "Do you know who I am? Do you know who I am?" It's better to go and say, "Dad, it's me. It's Gina, your daughter. I'm here to help you." And if they think you're someone else, yeah, so and so, you can. That's your granddaughter, and they're doing this, rather than correcting them. As far as wanting to let other people just go, I mean, that's your personal decision. Mm, sure, if it's overwhelming to you, you want to have other people step in. You want other people to come help, because it sounds like it's a lot for you to kind of deal with this, that this is where he's at. And yet, um, like for me, I don't know how long my dad has. We kind of, really all of us don't know how long someone has. But when someone's dementia, my dad's got Parkinson's, he's got so many risk factors. I don't know when his last day will be. And I am so glad I was able to move him close to me and that I can visit him and check on him. And I'm still working in Charlotte, which is what, 40 miles away from where I live and where he lives now. But I've got Don going there to check on him and, other support people. My mom will be there. And so some days maybe we have that day when it's just too much. And we got to take care of ourselves. If we are not doing those things to take care of ourselves, to replenish our cup, to nourish ourselves, to tap into what is helpful to us, then yeah, it's overwhelming going there. And so, you know, I guess I just hate for someone to have regrets.
Yeah. Well, a couple
But
of
yeah,
I just had a couple of thoughts, but no, finish what you were, what was there
go
something
ahead.
else?
I can take a
No,
bite there.
the what I would suggest, and I suggest a lot of time, I use this idea for a lot of different reasons, but uh, kind of building a mental shield for yourself, to know that when these things come at you, that you don't have to let wear them, and that you just have to kind of remember, be able to stop yourself and say, you know, that's dad. Right now, he's not in the best of places and thinking about stuff, and that it's not anything really about me necessarily. It's just where he's at, and let it kind of to try to let it kind of bounce off you, so you don't take it in and filter it in yourself. Um, and the other thought was, and we've seen these moments even with your dad, is there are moments when he's really cognitive and he's very much there. And if you're there, there may be a moment where he really does realize it is you. And think about how that would feel to him. It would feel really good to know that, just to know that somebody's there, even if he
Yeah.
isn't thinking the right person. Not
And
having, we see too many of those people that are in there that don't get visitors, that don't get people coming in, and that's very disheartening for them. I think they can still realize when somebody's there and how that probably makes them feel good.
and one way, connecting the time you do spend there, maybe it's overwhelming and maybe you only go for short periods of time or whatever you're able to do. Music accesses a different area of the brain than language. And unless someone doesn't like music, if your loved one, just pulling up music from their time period when they were a young adult, when they were a teenager, there's been studies on this. When they were a teenager in the early 20s, the music that was popular at that time can kind of spark memories um, and if they have a favorite type of music, playing that music. My dad and I spent quite a bit of time connecting with 60s music while he was in the hospital and stuff. And just the one day I put on something, it was like six stood up and he's bopping in his chair and moving. And he has a real hard time coming up the words of what he wants to say. Sometimes he can speak that makes sense. And sometimes I know he's trying to say something else than the words that are coming out. And yet, if the music comes on, he can even sing along to the lyrics. And it can just having those little moments of something enjoyable, taking a picture album or something that they like to do, and just so making it about you know, time of who they really are inside. Because when someone has dementia, we're not seeing like, they're stuck in this body right now, and this is where the disease has taken them. But there's so much more than that, right? And so we can take a little snippet of something from the past and have that memory with them and make a connection, even if it doesn't look like they're understanding or taking it in. We never know how much they are taking in, and it's got to be meaningful to just have those moments. So if you need to make your trip short, you know and the other thing is letting out those feelings. My sister wrote this beautiful poem, song lyrics recently, after visiting my dad, and a friend's daughter puts music to with the AI music. I'm not sure exactly how she did it, but it's like an AI generated voice and music to the words that my sister wrote. And it's just powerful, and because it's about my dad being trapped in his body and disease of Parkinson's, and it just let me give me an opportunity to cry, because we've got to let these feelings out. If we're walking around trying to deal with this, and we just I hate to see my dad like this, if we're not letting those feelings out, right? What happens, Don, when we don't externalize our feelings
Oh,
and and release those things, right? That's what EFT is all about. And also, it can turn to disease. Your heart disease,
mhm.
that stress, it turns inward. It affects our body in so many ways. And so, giving yourself that moment. To release whatever it looks like for you. And so that's really important.
Well, and the next question kind of plays right into that too, is how do you it says, how do you deal with the triggers when mom in her dementia brings up past issues that trigger me?
Mm.
I don't know exactly how to deal with all those triggers, and it really raises my anxiety.
Um,
Kind
this
of
ring
leads right into what we were talking about in a way.
and not to bring up past stuff with your family, but your mom went through this with her dementia, that she was all of a sudden didn't remember that you had left the Catholic Church and these different things. And she was like, do you remember? Like getting upset about things because she couldn't, she was stuck in the past. She couldn't remember these things. So that can be difficult. And those can be signs of dementia before we even realize, you know,
Oh
that's
yeah.
that paying attention to, like, okay, they're bringing up stuff, they're arguing about weird things, this doesn't seem like them, and like, okay, wonder if there's something else going on here. And then when we know it's dementia, again, we have to find a way to accept that their brain is not functioning optimally, and that they might be stuck in the past or on something that bothers them. And this is where our communication skills come into play, because we're not going to convince them whatever point they're arguing. Maybe it's something we've worked out in the past and now all of a sudden they're bringing it up again. This is where all we can do is say, wow, that really upsets you, Mom. I know that we disagree on this point. I hear that you're really aggravated by this. And it sucks. I'm sorry. And just acknowledge their feelings and accept what they're saying, and let them vent. And if they perseverate on it, be like, okay, you're really bothered by this, okay, I can give you 5 minutes right now to just talk about this, and I'm just going to listen, and then we're going to move on, and then we're going to do what we got. Would you like to spend this time, or Mom, I've got 20 minutes to spend with you before I have to go do something. Do you want to spend this time sharing about this and complaining, or give her that opportunity to, like, okay, I've got 15 more minutes. Do you want to continue to vent and want me to just be quiet? Um, and that's where then we decide, can I do that? Like, okay, you vented with me, you shared. I'm really trying to listen and not trying to fix it, not trying to, not trying to fight back with it, and say, but I just can't keep going over this again. And I need to step away, or I would like to do other things with you. And sometimes it's distracting, and sometimes it's better to just say, start talking about the kids, or start talking about something that they want to know about. Sometimes it's better to not be confrontive with it, and just to be like, hey, I brought you this, and
Hmm.
you know what, I've got to go. And like, we've got to use these strategies of how to deal with these things, and everybody's different. This is where me, as being your consultant, where I can work one-on-one with you, personalities are different. What works for one person might explode in someone else's face. Sometimes we can be direct. Sometimes there were times my dad was in the hospital. I'm like, Dad, you're here because you fell. You were not here brought by the police. You did not do something wrong. This is what happened. And sometimes that was able to help him. But there's other times when it doesn't. It's better to just say, hey, I saw this bird today. Let me show you a picture. My dad likes birds and used to do birding. And so there's different techniques and strategies. And so when I consult with you, I want to get to know you, your family dynamic, your loved one, so that I can give you the best support of what would work best in your situation and what things you can try. And we've got to realize our own limitations, how much time and energy and resources that we have to invest into this and to what matters most to us. And, so it's going to look different for everybody. And that's where me coming in to consult with you one on one, I can more specifically answer these kinds of questions and more specifically really help your situation.
Well, and also understanding the complexity of what the different things that they have going on, like your dad, Parkinson's and dementia, and he has back issues, and each
Yeah.
each each patient has different complexity, different mix of things that are going on for him, and that
And there are types of dementia that manifest differently, and it doesn't all, yeah, look the
and they
same.
also I think want to understand that they could bring that up over and over because that's part of, in dementia being repeating things, and to understand that, again, not to be combative with saying something like, Dad, you already brought that up again, yeah, that's bothering you, like you said, just not not combating against it, because they're gonna, if it is if it is a sign of dementia, they may repeat that, that may come
It,
up over and over.
that's a matter of acceptance on our part. We can't change them.
Yeah.
We can't change their dementia. We can't rationalize with dementia. We can't try to convince them that this is not true or what they think happened didn't happen. You're wasting your energy. You're wasting moments of your life. You're wasting your own health by trying to rationalize with dementia. Um, and so there's got to be acceptance on our part. Like, okay, with your mom, it was there's a can under the stairs. Your moved her out of her place to assisted living. Did you get the can of money under the stairs? And she would say that, and not getting mad about it. We all learn to laugh about it. She's going to ask about that every time we see her. And it's just accept it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. That that can under the money. She actually had money stuffed under the stairs. Oh, wait a minute. I spoke money. Uh, yeah, that is I didn't know if you wanted to talk any about kind of the questions you had to deal with this morning. Just a little bit about it anyway. If you don't want to, that's okay too. But you had to deal with some tough situations this morning. Nope, a little frozen there. Give it a moment here. We'll probably have it back in the meantime, just to let you know. Uh,
Um, yeah, no, happy to. Oh,
Go ahead.
oh, you were going to refresh and say this is Ask the OT?
Well, I was gonna say that, and we also have our next Ask the OT is on August 19th at 7 p.m. And then we have again another one on the 28th at noon. So again, this is Ask the OT with Gina, our occupational therapist, answering questions for people that might be struggling through dealing with an aging parent or an aging loved one.
And juggling the demands of life. So I came to work at my job in Charlotte for a couple hours, and I got a phone call. I think I was on the toilet, so I couldn't answer. And then I went in the office. I looked at the message. I'm like, okay, this is the nurse practitioner. It took me a minute. I'm like, Megan, who is Megan? Oh, it's the nurse practitioner um, from where my dad is living in assisted living. So I was like, I got to call this person back. So I'm like, okay, clock out. I call this person back, and he's had a lot of falls. Yes, we know this. Goes on to tell me he's had a lot of falls from getting out of bed. And we had our care plan meeting, and what we feel is that he needs a hospital bed because it would be lower to the ground, and he needs a scoop mattress. So it kind of puts you in the center, and so that he won't get up from the bed and fall. And she said, he's not using his call button to call for help. And I'm like, he doesn't have a call button. Um, so I had to process this recommendation she was giving me. And at the same time, bring up the fact that I know as a therapist, a scoop mattress is not going to prevent him from getting out of bed. If he was a lot weaker, if there were different circumstances, maybe, but he is on a Tempur-Pedic mattress, an adjustable bed, and it is already low to the ground because he's a short man. He needs that for pressure relief. He's at high risk of skin breakdown. Um, Putting him in a hospital bed is going to be an awful mattress. and he's not going to stop trying to get up from bed to go to the bathroom, because if you wake up in the middle of the night and you have to go to the bathroom, what are you going to do? You're going to get up and go to the bathroom. Yes, the call button. She's going to look into that because she thought there was a call button that he could utilize to call for help. And she's like, will he use it? I said, well, he has been in situations where he has. When he was at home with mom, she gave him a little bell to press, or he would call out help when he needed help. If he was feeling good, he would just get up. And I said, but he doesn't have one unless it was on him when you went on. She told me he was wearing one.
Not that I
So
saw.
so I was able to say, okay, she's like, okay, we'll look into that, right? And then, I disagreed with her on the mattress. I said he needs this plate. They say some places are restraint free, and that means there's no bed rails allowed on the bed because somewhere someone got caught in a bed rail. So the bed rails most places use now are not even half; they're like quarter bed rails, so that you have something to support yourself on, something to help you. When I work in nursing homes, we document that they need it to help with their mobility, and it actually can help prevent people falling out of bed when you've got something to hold on to, um, as long as it's not something they can get entrapped in. But these regulations are like, no, we don't want those rails. And she kind of came down the bottom line is they don't want him getting up from bed at night. And I brought up other issues that were going on. He's not always being taken to the bathroom. I found him with soil, in his brief that he'll tell them, no, I don't need your help. And he won't let them to help him. But when someone has dementia, you find a way to help them. You use creative strategies. You offer support. These are bigger fears to me about his skin breaking down. And I brought up his weight. I've been struggling to get a monitor on his weight. They tell me that they weighed him when he was at rehab and then they didn't put it in the system. We know somewhere between 2 weeks before moving to a facility, he was 157. And then he got to rehab, he was 142. Weight loss adds to weakness, it adds to falls, it adds to lack of functioning, especially someone who's already a very minimal weight to begin with. That's a big risk factor for things. And so I brought up these other concerns, and she even called me saying I don't have a lot of time. And she's, they're great staff, they're great people, and yet I need to advocate for my dad because I know from her perspective, working in this field, that the state says too many falls. These are the measures you take to reduce falls. You do this, you do this, you do this. They need to put that in place. And I know as a therapist, those things are not necessarily going to reduce the falls. She told me the falls were from getting out of bed. And I'm like, no, not all the falls were from getting up out of bed. And two, quality of life for my dad. Yes, I know he's at high risk for falling, and we want to always do things to minimize falls. But if someone is getting up to go to the bathroom, we need to have things in place. We need to have support systems, and we both agreed in an ideal world, the staff would be right there when he needed help. And in the ideal world, we'd pay for an additional person. That's what people do. They pay for a private sitter. You might be paying between $6,000 and $10,000 for someone to live in a memory care facility per month. And they also will pay for a private sitter because they can't provide that one-on-one level of care. It doesn't exist without paying for a private sitter. And the ratio's good there. There's 16 patients, there's 2 nursing assistants, there's a med tech. During the day, there's a nurse, there's more staff. Some places don't have that good of a ratio of staff to patients. But the staff can only be in so many places at once. And if the people don't ask for help, that's an issue. This is where checking on people every couple hours. They originally had told me they'd check on them every 2 hours, taking them to the bathroom. Is that happening? And so it helps that I know the system. I know what they're trying to, and they don't want him to fall. And but they also have to check these boxes and fill out these forms. And I'm going quality of life. This is my dad. He's been falling for years. I've always said you want to minimize falls because one fall, one bad fall puts you in the hospital, right? Yet we can't prevent it. We cannot guarantee that he's not going to fall. It's just not possible until he's at a point where he's so immobile.
Yeah.
And so I had to speak up. I had to advocate on behalf of my father, but also as an experienced occupational therapist who has worked extensively in the reality of this setting, in the reality of the environment. And I know she knows I know what I was talking about, and yet she's got to do her job. And I was firm, and I got a little upset because I didn't know I was getting this call about this. And I was like, wait a minute, we've got these other issues going on that I'm more concerned about. And she did say she would pass that on to other people, right? So advocating for a loved one, but knowing what questions to ask, knowing how to understand what they're saying. Because I'm sharing this with my family. We've got a chat with my brother and sister, my mom, while we're trying to get help for my dad, and I'm sharing what I'm doing. And I think my brother chimed in, we'll let them, put him in a hospital bed and see. And I'm like, well, for one, we have to get the hospital bed. We have to supply that. Two, changing him out from a nice pressure relief mattress to a standard mattress is really going to increase his skin breakdown risk. And to me, that's a more serious issue than falling in a man who's fallen over and over again. Now, the state might not agree, and their policies and procedures might not agree, but I'm sorry, this is my father, and his quality of life matters far more to me. And so, we got to find a way. So this is something I had to jump into today. And, even I was thrown off guard by it, but I said, that mattress is not going to do anything to keep me from getting out of bed. Because I know for a fact it's not.
Well, he
And
crawls out of the recliner when it's fully open, and the legs up, So I mean, yeah, that mattress
we could
probably would
agree
not.
that she's going to look into the call button, that he doesn't have that. And if there's a way that he can have that, and I can reinforce that with him, I can, you can learn new things with someone with memory impairment, although there needs to be a consistent plan in place. I just did a dementia course on this, and that you can have new learning, but there is a specific treatment strategy. There was a great speech language pathologist who gave this seminar. I did it for my continuing education on dementia, and I learned some new things. I'm always learning new things. I know that I don't know everything and have be all end all answers, and I do want their input as professionals and having my dad's care in mind. And also it triggers, it kind of sets me off a little bit because they're telling me that this is their plan to keep him from falling. And I'm going, that plan ain't going to work. And so she's like, well, I'll have the physical therapist reach out to you. I was like, that's good. I've talked with the physical therapist before. And, and we can have a debate about this, and we can discuss that there are, but there's policies and procedures, and there's things in place. And it's frustrating because they set these things up to protect people, and yet sometimes the things that are in place are not the best things to protect people. And it's not a be all end all for everybody. Kind of like I was just talking about how everybody's different and different things work for different people. There are some people where that kind of mattress could be helpful to minimize and reduce the risk. So that's where things are individual with people. Yet the state laws and regulations don't really allow for that. And so in addition to helping you, advocating for my dad, speaking about this, working one-on-one with people, there's another part of my brain that has a passion for speaking out to the legislators and the people who are making these decisions to help them rethink their rules, because they're not always in the best interests of the patients. And I'm passionate about that.
And yeah, and that's what this is all about, really, for us, is you and I is working towards doing that to help others, but also kind of make some changes in things. And
Is what
so,
matters. Quality
yep.
of the person. What matters is, yes, minimizing their risk of injury. Yes, minimizing trips to the hospital. And yet, not every same person is. You can't fit them into a formula of this is what we follow. If this is the problem, then we follow this and this and this. Because I know all too well that it doesn't always work, and sometimes it makes things worse, actually.
So that's our Ask the OT for today. If you want to find out more about and want to, have some time to spend with Gina and consulting and getting some answers.
With you. I'd love to spend, 30 minutes, learn more about you and what you do, and determine, can I help you? Can I work one-on-one with you, whether it's an hour consult or whether we work ongoing or kind of assess it along the way. I'd really love to step in and help other people.
So if you want to know more about that, just go to our website, www.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's focused with an ED, focusedhealthyfamily.com. And you can find out more about Gina there. You can contact us through that about getting a consult. You can find out more about uh, our weekly podcast we do every Thursday.
We cover a
Um,
lot of some of these topics. We have speakers on discussing different things, so be sure to check out the podcasts.
we and like I said, we're here to help you, and so let us know what we can do for you.
And put the message out to your friends. Don, remind us again when the next Ask the OTs are
The
going to
next
be.
one is going to be on the 19th, and it's at 7 p.m. And then the 28th is another noon lunchtime.
And August 28th. If you're watching this after the fact, be sure to check out our website for updates on when we're going to do Ask the OT. And you can send us questions ahead of time if you want to be live on Zoom or YouTube, however we're able to do that, Don, live. Let us know so we can get on the call, or being able to send messages to Don as we're discussing it. There's different options, or just to send it ahead of time, or so that we can help you.
Yeah.
And remember, in order to take care of our loved ones, we need to take care of ourselves first. And we need to really not just say that, but do things like get outside, drink water, do a little exercise, do some just simple deep breathing.
All right. That sounds good.